the filet mignon. Cut from the smaller end of the tenderloin, this lazy muscle does zero heavy lifting, making it the absolute softest piece of beef on the steer. Because it contains basically no intramuscular fat, it lacks that deep, beefy flavor we crave, but its melt-in-your-mouth texture has made it the ultimate look-at-my-bank-account flex in high-end steakhouses. The primary risk here? Your wallet, obviously, but also its total lack of fat, which means your expensive dinner can turn into a dry piece of leather if the chef looks away for 2 seconds. From a food safety standpoint, if it gets mechanically tenderized by a butcher to make it artificially softer, surface bacteria get VIP access right into the center, meaning ordering it rare suddenly becomes a lot more adventurous than you planned. The rib eye. Sourced from the rib section of the cow, this cut is legendary for its intense marbling and that beautiful, massive cap of fat. It is deeply worshipped by steak purists because that fat melts during cooking, basically self-basting the meat to create a juicy experience that will make you forget your student loans for 10 minutes. The real-world risk here lies in that heavy, saturated fat content, which your doctor and your fitness tracker will definitely judge you for if you eat it weekly. Plus, when that glorious fat drips onto the grill grates, it triggers massive flare-ups that coat your food in polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons, which is just a fancy scientific way of saying carcinogenic smoke particles that love to ruin our fun. The New York strip. Coming hot out of the short loin right behind the ribs, this cut features a thick, distinct strip of fat running down the side instead of being woven throughout the meat. It originally gained its legendary status at Delmonico's in New York back in the 19th century, and it's still the reliable, classic choice for anyone who wants actual flavor without sacrificing a good texture. We talk risk? Trying to cook a strip steak with that thick fat cap intact can leave you with an unevenly cooked mess if you don't know how to manage your heat. Also, actively chewing through that dense fat border drastically spikes your calorie intake, which is why half of us silently trim it off and hide it on the edge of the plate. The T-bone. This iconic, highly photogenic cut features a T-shaped bone with two completely different personalities attached to it. A New York strip on the big side and a filet mignon on the other. It's basically the ultimate I can't make decisions meal, offering both a robust chew and extreme tenderness on a single plate. The physical architecture of this thing introduces a logistical nightmare though, because that bone conducts heat entirely differently than the actual meat. You often end up with an overcooked outer edge and a center right next to the bone that is still practically mooing. Consuming undercooked beef trapped near a cold bone is a great way to meet some nasty bacteria if the kitchen's refrigeration wasn't absolutely flawless. The porterhouse. Think of this as the T-bone's older, wildly successful sibling that definitely has a better credit score and a larger apartment, taken from further back on the short loin. The rule of law states the tenderloin side must be at least 1.25 inches wide to qualify, making it a massive portion that usually requires a dining partner or a strong sense of determination. The safety hazards here are exactly like the T-bone, but dialed up to an 11 due to its sheer thickness. Getting the core of this giant to a safe internal temperature without completely incinerating the outside requires serious skill, and storing the leftovers is its own risk. Large, dense meat blocks take forever to cool down in your fridge, creating a cozy, lukewarm playground for bacteria. The tomahawk. This is literally just a ribeye steak that kept its long rib bone attached for the sole purpose of looking cool on your Instagram feed. It has completely taken over modern food culture, driven entirely by social media algorithms and the sheer theatricality of paying a premium for a piece of bone you are going to throw in the trash. Beyond the financial hazard of buying a steak that costs as much as a festival ticket, that long, exposed bone acts as a thermal shield during cooking. If you blast this thing over direct, aggressive heat, the meat clinging to the bone stays dangerously cold and raw, leaving you with an expensive side of live pathogens. The flank steak. Cut from the abdominal wall, this long, flat muscle is instantly recognizable by the coarse, distinct grain running straight through it. Back in the day, it was viewed as a cheap, tough scrap meant only for slow pot roasts. but it rebranded itself into a grilling favorite once people realized it thrives on a good marinade and a sharp knife slicing against the grain. Because it is incredibly thin and lean, it will dry out and turn into a rubber tire the second it hits medium well. While it's great for your macros, the hidden danger comes from the heavy sodium marinades it usually bathes in, or the classic cross-contamination blunder of pouring the raw, marinating liquid back onto the cooked meat, the skirt steak. Snagged from the diaphragm muscle inside the chest cavity, this long, thin, ribbon-like cut is famous for its punchy beef flavor and loose, stringy grain. It is the absolute backbone of authentic steak fajitas, requiring a lightning-fast sear over blistering heat to char the outside while keeping the inside a perfect medium rare. The risk profile here comes down to mathematics. Skirt steak has a massive surface area compared to its weight, meaning any surface bacteria from processing covers a huge percentage of what you're about to eat. If your pan isn't hot enough and you fail to get a hard, sterilizing sear, those surface microbes are coming along for the ride, the hanger steak. This elusive cut literally hangs out by the diaphragm, suspended between the ribs and the loin where it protects the internal organs. It used to be called the butcher's steak because old school butchers would secretly take it home instead of putting it in the display case, appreciating its deep, iron-rich flavor profile. Because it lives right next door to the steer's digestive tract, the risk of bacterial contamination during processing is naturally higher if things aren't handled with surgical precision. It also hides a notoriously tough, rubbery central membrane that will genuinely choke you out if you don't slice it completely out of the meat before cooking. The flat iron. Discovered in the shoulder clod, this modern cut comes from the chuck section, an area historically famous for being incredibly tough and requiring hours of braising. University researchers in the early 2000s actually used science to figure out how to isolate this specific muscle by slicing around a brutal line of connective tissue, creating the second most tender cut on the entire animal. The main risk with the flat iron comes down to the butcher's knife skills. If they miss even a fraction of that internal connective tissue, your trendy steak turns into an unchewable rubber band. And mass-market processing facilities often increase the risk of cross-contamination in these shoulder regions. The prime rib. This is the massive, majestic roast cut from the primal rib section that usually gets slow-cooked whole on the bone before being carved into thick, beautiful slabs. It's the undisputed king of holiday dinners and high-end buffets, known for its uniform pink color and juicy center. Because prime rib is a giant, heavy block of meat cooked over several agonizing hours at low temperatures, it spends an uncomfortably long time sitting in the culinary danger zone where bacteria love to multiply. If the raw roast wasn't kept ice cold before hitting the oven, or if the chef is just guessing the internal temperature without a digital thermometer, the center can easily become an absolute haven for food poisoning. The sirloin. Located way toward the back of the animal, this budget-friendly cut is divided into the lean top sirloin, which is great for weeknight grilling, and the tougher bottom sirloin, which usually ends up as ground beef. It gives you a high-protein, low-fat option with an authentic beef flavor without forcing you to skip your monthly rent payment. The immediate risk with sirloin is its total lack of fat, which makes it dry out faster than your text threads if you overcook it. From a health standpoint, it's a total win for your cholesterol, but its stubborn toughness often drives people to use chemical tenderizing powders that can accidentally carry surface bacteria deep into the center of the meat.